You're watching Black the Vote Digital Housing Forum. My name is Katrina Holland, Executive Director of Community Alliance of Tenants.
And I'm Hannah Holloway, Policy Staff with the Urban League of Portland.
So as you know, there is a lot wrapped up in this November's election. Our values as Oregonians are on the ballot. The housing crisis continues to crumble our communities. And so a group of us Black-led organizations came together to have some real talk with candidates and with people in the know about some of the issues on the ballot. Issues like Black houselessness, issues like access to home ownership, renters, luxury units that are vacant while homeless people are sleeping on the streets. And so we really wanted a chance to dive in and ask some really tough questions. We hope that you'll learn a lot.
Also, a quick note, we as nonprofits take our C3 statuses very seriously. In that effort, we made every attempt to get all candidates to this forum. We made repeated phone calls, emails, moved our schedules and our formatting around in an effort to get everyone here. So the candidates that you will hear from are the candidates who were able to make time for this Black Housing Forum.
We hope that you enjoy. Feel free to share it, send it to your friends, send it to your family, ask tough questions, and make sure that you get out your vote on November 6th. Hello everybody, this is Black the Vote Digital Housing Forum. My name is Katrina and I have here with me Jenny Lee, who's going to talk a little bit about Measure 26-199 and Measure 102 on November's ballot. Jenny, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Jenny Lee, and I am the Advocacy Director at the Coalition of Communities of Color. And we're an alliance of 19 culturally specific organizations engaged in collective action for racial justice. So I'm very honored to be here and can communicate some of the things that have been going on with our organizations and why this is so important to us. We also partner with many of the organizations who are involved in producing Black the Vote, so it's really great to get to participate. So thank you.
Great, thanks for coming. So we'll just ask a few questions about what Measure 26-199 and Measure 102 will do, and then just go from there. So what would Measures 102 and 26-199 do?
All right, so Measure 102 would amend the Oregon State Constitution to allow local governments to issue bonds and then partner with non-governmental entities to build affordable housing. So the situation right now is that there's a ban in the Oregon Constitution that prevents local governments from partnering, say, with a nonprofit affordable housing provider like PCRI or Hacienda CDC to build affordable housing. So that means that they are not able to access many kinds of other forms of financing to leverage those dollars, and then also have the flexibility to provide housing that meets the needs of communities of color that's really designed like our culturally specific CDCs are able to do. So it's a real missed opportunity as local governments are recognizing more and more the need to take action on Oregon's affordable housing crisis. The state currently is allowed to use bonds and partner with private entities to build housing. So this would simply be allowing local governments to do the same thing with their bond dollars. It passed with bipartisan support, and it's something that I think we can all agree that it simply makes sense to give local governments that flexibility to get as much housing as possible for our community members. Measure 26-199 is a local measure that will be on the ballot for voters who live in Metro's region. So it's our voters in Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas counties. And this would issue $652.8 million in bonds to build and preserve affordable homes for our community members who need them the most. So this is a huge opportunity. Portland passed a bond in 2016, but we know that that's just in the city of Portland, and also that the amount of resources simply is not enough. And so we absolutely need to meet the housing needs of our families in the metro area.
Great. So who will vote on these measures?
So it will be statewide for Measure 102. So that was referred by the legislature and then has to go before all the voters before they can amend the Constitution. And then Measure 26-199 will be those in the area that falls under Metro Regional Government's jurisdiction. So it's kind of that tri-county Portland area.
Okay. And what would you say Black voters need to know specifically about these?
I think what's really has been very meaningful to our members serving the Black community and representing the Black community is that this will meet the needs for more family-sized units. All too often we see with affordable homes that they are studios or one bedrooms, and those don't, many of our families, we have more kids, more intergenerational families, and extended family living together, because family can have a different meaning, or families can look differently in different communities. So we want to be sure that there are inclusive options so everyone has access to a decent home where they can make sure their kids have a place to sleep, that they're not overcrowded, and they're really in healthy housing conditions. So I think that's one piece of it, that it better accommodates the needs of communities of color, including Black families, by allowing us to provide family-sized homes.
And when you say family-sized, you mean...
Oh, yes.
2-bedroom,
Yes.
3-bedroom.
2-bedroom, 2 to 5 bedrooms, actually. So, because we know that's a really serious issue. It's leading to evictions for immigrant and refugees and families of color because they can't afford a large enough unit. And that's also compounded with the broader housing crisis. And when it impacts members of your family or your community, folks take in their neighbors, they take in their family members, and then that overcrowding can actually it's a lease violation, and then it can lead to a cycle of eviction, which destabilizes multiple families. So it's really critical that we meet that need. The other piece I think that's very important about this bond is that it serves often more than we see with other kinds of housing financing. It serves a substantial number of people with very low incomes. So folks, who are earning minimum wage, who might be providing care to a family member and not employed full time, it's able to help provide homes that the market absolutely isn't going to afford. So when we look at how families look across communities of color, as well as income disparities that are driven by systemic racial disparities and institutionalized racism, this helps to meet that and kind of close that gap with housing affordability.
So it kind of sounds like this measure would be a step in the right direction to help right some of the wrongs that have created significant income disparities between Black and white families. Mm-hmm. I think the average income for the average white family is up in the 50 to 60,000s, and I think for Black families it's close to like 30 or something. Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So how will measures 102 and 26-199 appear on the ballot? What's the certified ballot title?
So Measure 102 is going to be the very first measure that's on your ballot, and it will read, the title is that removes restriction that affordable housing projects funded by municipal bonds be government owned. Okay. And then Measure 26-199 will be down toward the end with the other local ballot items. And the question is, shall Metro issue bonds to fund affordable housing for low-income families, veterans, people with disabilities, and will require independent oversight and an annual financial audit?
Okay. How will the bond funds be raised? Who will pay? How much will they pay?
So this will be a bond on property owners with a rate of 24 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. And the important thing to note is that is on the assessed value, not on the market value. So homes are generally assessed dramatically lower for the purposes of property taxes than they actually could be sold for on the market today. So that actually translates then to about $5 per month for the average homeowner, or $60 a year. So we're really talking about that, cup of fancy coffee is what what the average homeowner would be contributing toward building more affordable homes.
Okay. And who is the housing for? Who will be able to move in after some of the units are built?
So the housing would be restricted to households with less than 80% of the area median income, and that's the absolute maximum. And that's
area median income
in this area. It's about $65,000 for a family of 4. Okay. So that kind of gives you a sense that these are folks. When you're a family of 4, you've got kids. It's really, with this housing market, that's actually not a ton of money. But it also will serve people with lower incomes, like I was talking about, that really to make sure that we're able to provide housing for folks who really there's nowhere to go on the market.
That's like 0 to 30.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So people like it's working minimum wage, people who, might have a disability and receive Social Security. So that will also be met, that there are units with affordable rents for people in those income categories as well. And specifically, so low income families as well as veterans and people with disabilities. So those are the some of the target populations that the bond seeks to serve because they have additional challenges finding stable housing in this market.
Okay. Who will own and manage the properties?
So that question depends on if Measure 102 passes. So if Measure 102 passes, the government could own and operate the projects just as they can now, but they could also choose to partner with a nonprofit or for-profit entity to own or to operate that housing. So affordable housing financing can get extremely complicated. So there's some questions I think that will be resolved after, depending on whether or not Measure 102 passes, to figure exactly how, like, will it look kind of like the state structure? Will there need to be differences? So I'm not admitted to practice law in the state of Oregon, so I can't say to what exactly that would be, but we know that there would be that option for like ownership and operation. There'll be some opportunity there to make that look different. If Measure 102 does not pass, it will be government owned and operated.
Okay. Which means there would likely be less housing.
Yes, so that means the important thing of why Measure 102 needs to pass is because it will enable us to build more homes. So we're talking about 2,400 homes if Measure 102 doesn't pass. So that's a number that'll be created or preserved, and that would house about 7,500 people. If we pass Measure 102, we're talking about 3,900 affordable homes, housing up to 12,000 people.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, that's huge. And Measure 102, that's not an additional bond or anything. That's simply just giving local governments the flexibility to build more homes.
Okay. So how will the Black community and other communities of color be included in the implementation plan should 26-199 pass?
Well, throughout the process of developing the Metro bond, there was a robust stakeholder engagement, I would say, from community-based organizations who advocated very strongly to ensure that the type of housing the bond would build would meet the needs of communities of color. So many of the organizations like housing advocates, culturally specific organizations, advocates for low-income folks all came together and really, I think, communicated that. And that message was heard pretty well in terms of how the bond was structured. So we want to see a continuation and expectation now that there continues, that there is a strong community engagement process, that we are present early, so not having a decision made and then coming and asking, well, what do you all think? Or please respond to this proposal. Instead, hearing input about priorities and then actually developing it and co-creating it with communities of color at the decision-making table. So that they're treated, that we are treated like any other stakeholder, like a developer, like a local government that has that kind of authority. Communities of color absolutely need to be represented and have that same weight, or actually centering racial equity issues, but that we are recognized as decision makers in that process. So we definitely expect to advocate for that. The passage of this bond, it will involve many jurisdictions. So there will be intergovernmental agreements between these jurisdictions and Metro, and then also that process.
That's like the City of Portland, Metro Regional Government, Multnomah County, Washington County, City of Beaverton. That's what you mean by jurisdiction.
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
okay.
thank you. So local governments. So depending, and there's a lot of detail around who ends up getting the money directly versus going through the housing authorities, that the county agencies. So not to to avoid too much detail there, but yes, it'll involve individual, intergovernmental agreements and then implementation on the ground. So that's why it's so important that community members are engaged, because they are the experts in their neighborhoods and their cities, towns, the counties, and really need to be engaged to provide that input, because it's not something that just is going to come from top down and is a one size fits all. It's going to be up to community members and advocates.
Okay. So how will oversight bodies include and be responsive to communities of color? How do we imagine advocating for that?
I think conversations have already gotten started even prior to the election, again, ensuring that the role in the bond creation and the development of the bonds framework is also something that Metro and local governments recognize needs to continue, and that oversight absolutely has to involve the people who are most impacted by this affordable housing crisis, which is largely communities of color. So we absolutely expect that our coalition and many of our members, will be continuing to push on that and make sure that that's how the oversight process and committee are designed, that they are responsive and that expectation is established.
Great. Well, thanks so much. That's all the questions I have for you today. Are there any final comments that you want to address to our audience?
I would just like to say that this is such an important opportunity for us to take just meaningful local action on our affordable housing crisis. We see the challenges that folks have in affording homes now. We see increases in homelessness, but all of these have impacted communities of color really throughout our region and our state's history, and that we absolutely need to take this opportunity to build more and preserve more affordable homes that will meet our community's needs. So just asking, it's not going to solve the entire problem, but it builds affordable homes as part of our infrastructure and is a real step in the right direction.
Great. Well, thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Katrina.
Thanks, guys, for watching.